And we are live. We are doing Contessa playing against type, just in case we are not professionals. So if you are pissed off at us, you can't get us fired. And there will be cursing, so just if you're offended by that, and probably a few other topics that you could be delicate to. If you are, turn off the YouTube. And let's start off by introducing everybody. Liz.
Okay. Hey, my name is Liz. I am the founder of Angry Hamster Publishing, and we are currently kickstarting our game Witch.
Meera.
I'm Meera Berry. Apparently, I am anonymous in the Matrix today. I have a superhero of power of getting all of the turkey meat off of the turkey and making pretty girls cry. That's okay, because they're my kryptonite.
And Misha.
Hi, I'm Misha, longtime player, occasional panelist. I don't try to make pretty girls cry. It kind of happens sometimes, but I also make the pretty boys cry, so it's all cool.
So it's official. We are all about making people cry.
Whenever humanly possible.
So playing against type for me is making sure when you go into a game you are not playing yourself. Although at the beginning for a lot of early players that is the onslaught of what you do immediately, or you select your favorite character from a show and play that. Because it's easy, but why is it that playing against type is so important?
Well, the whole point of role-playing in a lot of ways is to gain experience and delve into the other, wouldn't you think? I mean, at least that's one of the things I try to do. I like to use role-playing to work things out and to explore, and sometimes to be a hero. And it's hard to be a hero in a bureaucratic administrative position, though sometimes you can.
That is very true. I think also it's just when you play against type, you get to experience other things, or you get to express things that do frustrate you. Like, for example, if I do play a male character at times, and a friend of mine is playing a female character, and they usually don't, this is horrible, but I do make sure that they're fine with it. I will be a misogynist asshole at times while I'm playing a male character. I do, of course, make sure that that character is fine with it out of character, but they do get a sense of how it is to be a woman even in the past. Like, for example, the game Roach, made by Jason Morningstar, you play professors in a school in the 1920s around there. And so somebody was playing a female professor, and I'm playing a drunken professor who keeps asking, why is she here? It made everybody wonderfully uncomfortable, but they were uncomfortable in a point that they understood that this was all in character. It wasn't me attacking her. But also expressing, hey, if you're going to be that person, it's not going to be easy. So, Liz, why is it important to you to play against type?
I think, well, basically what you guys have said, like you put yourself in somebody's shoes, and it's so important. I think also if you are playing with someone who has a different experience from you, that can also just be very enlightening. For example, we had one player, and we were playing in 1947, right after the Second World War. We were playing Vampire the Masquerade, and my friend, he had chosen to play an African American. And I told him, I was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, no. And he had this whole character concept, and he'd worked it out, and he wrote like this really sad character concept, and he was really pretty happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm like, it's going to be difficult, right? And he didn't get it. And then after the first session, he's like, why is everyone being assholes to me? I'm like, because that's the way it was. And you saw this kind of light bulb go off in his head, and he's like, oh, wow, that was really bad. And I'm like, yeah, it was. But it was nice for him to have that experience, because he just never kind of realized how it was till he almost experienced it himself to a very small extent. And that's why playing against type is important, because you get to engage in those roles that you normally would never be exposed to.
That is very true. Um, within the form of education, because I happen to have worked in Holocaust education, one of the things that they do say is that we should not simulate. And that's pretty difficult, and I think it's honest in regards of the fact that, like, in roleplay, you are pretending to be someone completely not yourself. But I think it's also important to touch bases when you're having someone who is not of that gender or not of that sex or not of that preference, to understand it's not going to be easy. Of course, there should be a trust when you're a GM of allowing them to know, hey, this is going to be difficult, because it would be hardcore if you're a completely new player to have some triggers brought onto you when you don't realize it. But it's also making people realize that there is, when you are of someone completely other than the basis of a white male, which is a basically dominant in the gaming perspective when we look at it, because it's all like, hey, who's a superhero? A nice white man. You have to sort of push their buttons in a way, because they have never lived in that culture, and they've never really been around people of those different cultures. So that is extremely important. Does anybody have any inputs to put in before I go into the next question or read what Beth's response is?
I did have one thing to point out, is that
Okay.
the assumption here is that role-playing is an intimate experience, which is why it can cause these triggers. And I think it's really important to note that sometimes you don't know what your triggers are going to be. I was in a game at one point where it was a quasi-LARP, I guess, I forget there's an exact term where it kind of transitions from tabletop to LARP. And one of the GMs started freaking out and screaming as, the mother of the family, and throwing herself against a wall. Okay, and this was all in character. And I was like, no, this does not make me comfortable. I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know that was going to be an issue. Okay, again, if you presume that role-playing and you're going to be in a position that's going to be an intimate position, that it's going to affect you emotionally, that's why you have to have what you said, those checkpoints, those commentary, and understand that, it's going to really affect some people in ways you weren't expecting. So when you're somebody else, you're just as liable for that.
I like that. And so I'm going to read a response that I had Beth Mitchell write for us, just in case. Beth Mitchell is openly trans, and I play with her on a regular basis. Unfortunately, she could not join us today because of work, but I really didn't want to leave out her voice, which I thought was important. Beth typically plays something that's closest to her, so I thought it'd be interesting to bring in somebody that actually plays somebody that's close to her, dear in heart. And her response to why is role-playing important to you? Role-playing is important to me because I didn't have role models in the same way others do growing up. I really struggled with the assignments of what we needed to write about them. Now, I have a name of possibilities of models like Lana Kouachi, Lauren Cox, Ellen DeGeneres, Ellen Page, but none of them spoke the whole time while I was growing up. And I didn't know what to call myself while I was growing up. As a teenager, I was so busy trying to fit within society that I didn't know what a clue meant to be myself. Now, as an adult, I can't go around acting like a teenager, although some do get away with that as I figure myself out. Instead, every character I write has a bit of myself inside. I continue to figure myself out through the games, and I have grown as my characters have grown. And so this is going to go to the next question. What stereotypes are you tired of seeing in games?
The lone white dude who can save everything.
Yes, the white savior, as they call it on the internet. Nothing like seeing the white guy going, I'm going to free the slaves, everybody! You're like, we can free ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's help, there's allyship, but at the same time, look, one person can't do it all. You can't. Nobody can be the savior of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just. It either is going to take working with a group or with a team or something, but you can't have that one guy who's able to do everything.
or my favorite is the lone white savior with the person of color sidekick that made him see the error of his ways. It's like,
Yeah.
my daddy owned slaves. Now my best friend is an ex-slave. That means I have to fix it because I see them as my ally. I'm kind of tired of that too. One of the things in games, I'm tired of elves being portrayed as only white. That's the one thing that really, I'm like, can they be other colors? Can they be other than blonde and blue eyes and very, very pretty?
And
Oh
if
my
they
God,
are
yes.
dark skinned, can they not be evil?
So I have a little story about this. When I started gaming with my children, my daughter came up with this character who was an elf, very tall elf with black skin and black hair. And it's been very difficult to find a miniature for her because the only options pretty much are drow. So I'm like, I'll paint its hair black for you.
Yeah, the first time I played a D&D game, didn't know the background of D&D really, just walked into a game, saw a picture. There was a picture of a drow, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks cool, and so I make my character, and okay, so she's got dark skin and white hair, it kind of looks like Storm. It's kind of cool. I
Yeah.
can go with that. And so I walk into the tavern, and one of the other PCs comes up and slits my throat.
What?
Yeah.
What?
My
What?
intro.
I had my microphone off, but what?
That was my intro to D&D. So, can we not make dark-skinned people be evil? I'm just saying.
But also, like this. That makes me so
There's so many
angry.
things wrong. Yeah, you can't even do that. Yeah, so I'm cool.
Like, I
I
just
play D&D sense, but it's like, as a GM, if you're going to say, hey, by the way, if you make somebody who looks like this, that they're going to assume you're evil, that would be a nice heads up to say it. B, if, hey, if you're bringing in somebody who's obviously playing a PC, maybe we don't go straight for the player kill. Just say it.
Yeah, I think it's also the GM has free interpretation to decide what goes and what doesn't go in the game.
Yeah.
Which is something that, like, I've had discussions with people being like, I don't feel as if game designers do have a responsibility to some degree, but the players at the end of the game get to modify whatever it is that they want from the game, which is something that when I read Promotion, Liz's a witch she's like, you can change whatever you want in the game because it's your game. We're just giving you a background of what it is that we're offering it to you, but at the end it's your game. You get to decide what works for you. So to be like, hey, here's a black-skinned character, a drow, walking in, and you immediately decide to slit their throat instead of, hey, small confrontation, realize that person's not evil.
But also, like, this just made me angry on a very nerdy level because I'm like, drow are like coal black, and I'm sorry, I'm not having a seizure, but it just makes me angry. I'm like, this person like is wrong on so many levels. Like, one, don't do that to someone just playing the game.
Yeah,
Two,
especially in a con game.
drow are coal black. Three, like, I'm done. I'm sorry. That's not okay, Misha.
Does it make sense to have somebody coal black living underground?
That was the other thing. So Quinn been doing some really cool things with, reimagining the background of the drow, and it's been really cool to read. Some of the things, like they aren't evil by just pure, you're not bored evil because nobody's bored evil. It's just But some of the other things are like, does it really make sense? No. I mean, most creatures that develop underground tend to be really pale. Just saying. They tend to lose pigmentation because it's not really an adaptation. Yeah.
All right. So the gnomes, I don't know what their names are, but they're like grayish. They're like really gray and pale, and that always struck me as like what people underground would look like, kind of golem-like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is very much sidetracked.
So let's go to the next question. When playing against type, what are the things you should consider?
I always say be respectful of what you're playing.
Yes.
So if you are not black and you're gonna play a black character, you're still playing a person. Try not to be a douche. If you're
Yeah.
gonna play a gay character, let's not make them, a mincing ponce for no reason. If there's a reason they're a mincing ponce, yeah, sure, go for it. But at the same time, it's a stereotype and it's a harmful stereotype. Let's try to not go there.
Yes. In the midst of writing my article about playing against type, and I open it up to the floodgates of people that decided to answer from the bottom of their hearts towards me. I did relay an experience, which was a board role-playing experience where somebody decided to play a werewolf panther Puerto Rican, which I could have nitpicked a lot of areas because, one, there are no wild cats within Puerto Rico, so part of me is like, that's wrong. But
Let that part
being,
slide.
yeah, I'll let that part slide because it's magic, whatever. I don't know where your ancestors came from, so I'm not gonna make presumptions or if it was a curse. This person was supposed to be 100 years old, and when said why it was that they knew how to pick a lock, their excuse was because I'm brown, bitch. And my immediate reaction as a Puerto Rican was, that's racist. And two, there are other curse words besides puta, which means whore. And like Spanish being a vast language, I offered this person a bunch of links of being like, hey, if you're going to play an 100-year-old Puerto Rican, there are a lot of things of why it is that you could be against Caucasian people to begin with, and here are the links of why. And it was almost weird to see the reaction of everyone else to that because it was almost like reliving the reason why the other person was calling me a racist, which, let's be very clear, if you are a minority, you can't be racist towards a white person because white people can oppress you. They have civilized other people. They have changed their whole religion. So I can't really be racist towards you because I've never made your ancestors into slaves or sterilized them. So, in gesture of being nice, I offered information, and in response, I got negative information in which I was attacked to my face. In which brings in the topic of calling it in, which is supposed to be that you go to someone just to be really nice to let them know what's going on. But as women in role play, calling in is very difficult because once you approach somebody in a very nice setting, letting them know, hey, this is not okay, you do get the possibility of being attacked and being attacked in private, which is much worse than being attacked in public. In public, someone else can come in and say, hey, you shouldn't have responded that way when, for example, Liz was really upset at the way that you responded towards her. In private, that person has all the possibility to attack you and then make you look like an insane person because women have emotions and we be crazy. So anyone who has responses to that of why it is, I think before I finish, do your research. And it's not really too bad if you happen to have a person of color as a friend to ask them a question. Because if you're nice, we'll answer. If not, there's the internet.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of one-on-one stuff you can do. It's really easy. I mean, there's a couple of great Tumblr blogs out there. One is writing with
Writing
color, I
with
think,
color, which is one of my favorites.
which has a lot of suggestions. But I mean, even if you do just go to like Tumblr or Google Plus or Twitter, there's a lot of voices out there, and it doesn't hurt to pick up a book or read through a blog. These are the topics that people are talking about. Follow some people on Twitter or something. See what it is that they find are issues. See what it is that their viewpoint is, and try to bring that through when you're playing a character from that background.
And understand that an approach is not a confrontation. I think that that's a big thing, is when somebody actually gets up the guts to talk to you about something, they're vulnerable.
Yes. Because there's always a backlash of when you tell someone, hey, this is racist, you're not calling them a racist per se. You're telling them their action is racist, and maybe they should reconsider what they've done. As the same that you can tell somebody that they're being transphobic or they're being homophobic, etc. The reason that you speak out is because you want that person to be a better person. When we role play with people in a group for a long time, you sort of consider them sort of friends, not maybe super close, but there are times that you're seeing this person on a weekly basis. You know who they are, and you're thinking, I want you to be a cool person. Please be a cool person. And my lashing out is making you look like a jerk. Liz, I can see your eyes rolling.
No. I agree. I want to say that I just want to say that anyone who dares to, because I don't think a lot of people do it actually when you're playing something other than yourself. A lot of people don't dare to ask somebody like, is what I'm doing okay? Like, or like, what about this? Is the question. So anytime you're doing that, like, you are such a brave person, and no matter how big of an ass you think you sound, like you are doing the right thing by asking and trying to be respectful to the people, whoever you're betraying. But I would also to say to that that when you get the responses, because I mean, obviously, I think you've seen from this panel that we all feel very strongly about this. Like I would say try like whenever you get feedback just to listen and process it a bit from yourself. Don't automatically respond because you're not being personally attacked. People are just telling their stories and what they've experienced, and unfortunately sometimes that can get very like emotional. So that's my advice for when you actually go and ask somebody about something.
And Beth had responded that what you should consider is, I think they're having three-dimensional characters is more critical when I'm playing outside of my identity. Otherwise, I'm just going to be projecting flat-out stereotypes. So it is important to bring 3 dimensions, even if in the back of your head you think you're bringing in a stereotype. Now, we've been playing Urban Shadows for a while, and I have been playing a werewolf that happens to be African American, who was orphaned and raised by Afro-Caribbeans, and she happens to be leader of the pack that happens to also be regarded as a gang. But when I do refer to her, I never refer to Natalie as being just this insanely angry person. It's this person that has been forced responsibility, who doesn't want the responsibility, that wants her group to basically be better than who they are, but doesn't know how to do it because she is so young. And so I try to take that in consideration, and when I do play these games, I do consider things that are important. Like, for example, the last session that we had, she had her whole werewolves start a protest because they're arresting all of the other werewolves, which were Latino and Black people. And so they were protesting in peace. But it was a touch on Ferguson because that's a weird thing that I do during my games. I talk about gentrification and stuff like that because I consider those kind of like monsters in my head. But it's okay to bring certain stereotypes out, but maybe make it three-dimensional. Don't make a character that's just, oh, they're in a gang. Well, why are they in a gang? Like, is it because they've been forced into it? Did they want to do something else in their lives? Like, I always write that Natalie was basically forced to do this because her alpha left and there are just a bunch of little kids left by themselves. And so what do? You take care of your own, and you have to take care of your own. That's what you do, which happens a lot within minority groups in which somebody leaves, the father figure leaves in your life, then your mother has to step up and decide that she is going to work instead of finishing her studies. So there are going to be mistakes that they do. Make the character three-dimensional. Don't give me something that says, here's a stereotype and they're just bad because they were born that way. And give them heart. That's super important, especially if you're having other minorities watch you while you play. And I know it's sort of touchy, but one of our players is playing a lesbian Latina. I am not offended by him playing this because he's done his research and he's been very kind of saying, hey, Ariana, you happen to be Puerto Rican. Just let me know if I've done something wrong. It's cool. We're not going to bite your faces off. Which goes... Usually. Unless I'm going to hunt you down in some way.
But at the same time, so part of the research is know what the tropes are. And if you do bring them in, do it either intentionally with an eye towards subverting them somehow. Don't just do straight up trope, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because some things are tropes for a reason, and some things aren't. But some things, if you are playing to the tropes, just make sure you, like I said, know what they are, and B, when you're doing them, make sure you know why, either why it's a trope or why you chose that trope to portray. Don't
does it make sense?
Yes.
What you're doing? That's what I always have. Like, you can be like, my least favorite thing is like the female slut, because anytime anyone, like, I don't mind slutty characters, like, I think those are awesome, but like, and I mean, like, if you're, there's like some situations where even if you're the sluttiest person in the world, you're not going to try to seduce somebody.
Yeah.
And
nobody's going to seduce a lich.
What I mean?
I'm just sorry. Nobody is going to seduce the lich. Ew, 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 ew.
Or even saying that if that person happens to be, quote unquote, the slut, you could also just not have it be, she has low self-esteem, which is just the one thing that drives me insane. It's sort of like she has low self-esteem. What if she has very high self-esteem and just wants to seduce people?
She had a boyfriend that treated her wrong. Ugh. Sorry.
She has daddy issues.
Daddy issues, and her boyfriend treated her wrong, and she's emotionally insecure, and that's why she does that. And she's just
all
waiting
she
for
really
one
needs,
right man.
the right guy that will let her know how beautiful she is on the inside.
With the magical penis.
Mm-hmm. Suddenly she's a virgin again. All right.
That's another one. Okay, the trope where you've got this super experienced woman and she's confident and she's strong, and then all of a sudden she falls in love, and now all of a sudden everything that was cool about her goes out the window. She's no longer confident. She's turned into this simpering, shy, shrinking person where it's a complete opposite of what she was before she met this guy, and it's like,
other things that the other question is, there's a lot of talk about being welcoming towards other races, ethnicities, sexuality, genders. How do we improve upon that in the roleplay community, which is a touchy subject? I think, to me, it's partially to do with class. I'm saying socioeconomic classes, to me, in a personal level. And then it also has to do, is what we regarded before, is it's a lot of white male heroes as protagonists, and we see a lot of white dudes. I'm not meaning this as an insult, it is a fact, viewers, that happen to play the game in general. One of the solutions has been, we should have more female designers, and then if you aren't in any of these beautiful communities, you keep seeing, if you're a female designer, please join my group. Or if you're a female, I would really love to hear your input. Or if you're a colored person, please do this. Which I think puts a lot of pressure on those of us who happen to be out in the open, showing interest, reviewing games, playing games, and maybe also designing games, because we're put on this pedestal suddenly. And we're trying to get other people to stand up and talk, and I think that's a difficult question in general. I don't know how everyone else feels, is getting these people on the board because they have very reserved feelings on how they've been treated, which, like, with Contessa, it's trying to get people to come out and talk about games, and people are very shy about it, or they've not had the best encounters on people, or etc. And then with people of color, it's just, we don't see ourselves in those games. We don't see. It's like, first time I saw Liz, I was like, oh my god. And like, honestly, as a person of color, I have to restrain myself if I see a person who happens to have, like, not the token European last name, and not like a completely white face. I can't go reaching out to them, immediately sending a message, even though I did with Liz, to be like, let's be friends.
I was like, yes, let's be friends right now. That's how it went. And then the rest. I
So,
think
what are your ideas on that?
I mean, I think it's important. Like, I think it comes from the right place. People wanting to hire more minorities, like in general, whether that be women, people of color, different sexual backgrounds, and things like that. Like, I think it comes from the right place. And for me, at least, I think it's more, and I think I think in general, that's what everyone's trying to do in the end, is to give people a voice. And I personally think maybe a good way to do that is just if you do see someone, or you know somebody who is designing something awesome, who isn't the stereotype of what the industry is, and it is awesome what they're creating. If it's a steaming pile of shit, you should just keep your mouth shut and support them as a friend. Um, but if it is awesome, just try to give them a little bit more of a voice. You know what I mean? Like, share what they're doing. You know, tell people about it. Be their cheerleader, basically. And I think that's for anyone, and it doesn't, not even minorities. I think that's like the biggest compliment someone can pay to your work, the fact that they like what you're doing and they support you. And I think that if we continue to do that, and we continue just to be lovely to each other, that you know that will, I think that's the best way to integrate everything, actually.
I would absolutely agree that that encouragement to say, I want to see what you do is so important. I'd also say that listening, I'm hearing a lot about normalization. And I'm thinking of normalization as, for example, the other day I was going up to the front to the receptionist and I said, my brother's boyfriend is going to be bringing me some keys, just let me know. And she's like, your brother's what? And I said, my brother's boyfriend, just like it was the most normal, absolute, not a issue in the world. And I think that that's just it. I think we need to do that with gaming. I think we've talked a lot about gaming and using it as a method to teach people to bring up issues like Ferguson, or, just taking that opportunity to learn and bring that into the spotlight of the people that we love, that we're gaming with, the people who are important to us because we're sharing this moment with them. So that's, I think, really a great part of it, encouragement. And what I was saying at one point, next time I'm in an open gaming area, I am going to do my absolute best to open and say, hey, do you want to come and play this? To everybody who stands there at the door, the threshold, whatever, and looks a little bit lost. Because I think that if I felt that, that would be absolutely it. I would be invited and I would feel valued.
Yeah, and one of the things that with the trying to be welcoming, one of the things that they've been doing recently at some of the conventions I go to is something called the one chair rule. When you're sitting in a group and you're welcoming people in, always leave one chair empty. So if you come and join, bring a chair with you, but leave a chair open so that people know, yes, it's okay to come and join us. There's a space for you to sit here. Please come join us. And it does really, it does make a difference. And it turns, it makes it a little less insular, because you instead of getting these little pockets of people having the same discussion, you end up with lots of bigger circles with people, or and people who might not have interacted before. Oh, hey, there's my friend, she's sitting with somebody else who I don't know. Hey, well, okay, well, let's okay. And so now you're spreading the connections around, and letting people talk to each other who might not have talked to each other. They might both be at the same convention to game or to do something else, but they might not have talked to each other before because they didn't necessarily run in the same circles before. And so that's been a big help, with just fostering some of that inclusiveness.
Yeah, it's being welcoming, and it's realizing that we should not erase race or gender or any of those things within games. One good point is that what Beth gave to me when I was talking about being welcoming towards other is, by default, let the players portray characters as they feel. If someone wants to play a paladin orc, go for it. But don't fall into the trap of saying people in this world won't notice that at all. That would be really what really help. What does it help by erasing like identities? It doesn't mean play up the stereotype, use it, add depth, add flavor to random characters. A specific example: a trans NPC who, when misgendered, attacks, verbally or physically. Generally, that wouldn't matter, but sometimes it would just come up. Um, there are talks about why people don't play trans characters in games, and the reason that I brought up Beth's voice is when we have spoken is a lot of times for her is that a trans person wants to be regarded to the gender that they identify with. So if you're going to bring up the fact that they are transgender, there are a few questions there are a few questions that you should probably ask them beforehand of if they have passing privilege, if they don't have passing privilege, or is this a new group of people, stuff like that, which is perfectly fine to ask them because it is a touchy subject, as the same as with race or with gender. But when it's about things that you can't really, when you can basically notice, as the same of saying someone's skin color or someone's other specific stuff, you should be able to ask those questions and know that trans people just want to be regarded the gender that they identify with. So that's just one thing that she made very clear before people start asking those questions. That is specifically her feeling about it, but it's also for us to be as welcoming as we can, as brought up before. You become somebody's cheerleader, you ask them if any way that they can help beyond just putting money into their Kickstarters or promoting it. You are just letting them know that they're welcomed and they are loved, which is something that I try to do my best in if I happen to by chance ask somebody to do something for Contessa, or even on a personal level. Like, I want us to be friends, and I want you to feel completely comfortable with me. Because if I'm going to ask you to do something, I don't want you to feel like, okay, I got to do it because this girl does so-and-so. I honestly want people to feel like they are in a part of a larger group, that they're not in this alone. Because it's fairly scary to come into the gaming community and think to yourself, am I the only person like myself in here? Like, is there anyone out there like myself, or am I just the only person with this nerdy interest? Which will just...
And following along with that, if you're a GM or a designer and you're making a game and you're including art, one of the tips that I had was take all of the pictures of that you're going to have in your book, for example, put them all in one space. Does this reflect the world around you? Or are they all white people? Are they all guys? Are they all tall, thin, under 20-somethings? Are they all, look at them as a group, so that, because when you're looking at it, if you're just flipping through a book, you're going to start to see, but if you put them all in one space, you can kind of notice that trend up front before it goes to print, or before you lay it out. Because a lot of times if you're playing a character at a con or something, and you go up and so the GM will print out some character sheets, and they might put some pictures on there, and you can pick from these pictures this to represent. And if you look at the pictures that are there and none of them look like you, it doesn't always feel terribly welcoming. If all the pictures are, if none of them look like you, so a lot of it, visual representation is important. And so being able to see, okay, this person is welcoming. They're not making, just everybody look the same. It's not a big homogenous group. I can fit in here, even though I'm not as, I don't fit into the homogeny that's going on around here.
We had that discussion with the 5th edition core book, the new D&D book. We had just gotten it. We were all so excited. We opened it, and one of my friends had made the comment. They're like, "Oh, D&D's really trying hard because there's more people of color in it. There's larger women," and they kind of meant it in a bad way, as if they're like D&D's like really trying to include people. And I looked at them and I'm like, no, D&D's just finally representing everyone who plays their game now. Like, I thought it was it's a step in the right direction. And to go off what Meera said, I mean, this stuff should be normal. We should treat the fact that there are people who have different sexualities and people who are in different skin tones. This should be a normal thing, at least I feel, within our hobby. And that was what made me so happy when I opened the D&D book, and I was like, this is like, finally, thank you, D&D, you know? And they're really a big company, so they kind of, I know that's bad to say, but they kind of have that responsibility to kind of be the people who are like, this is what's normal now, you know?
Yeah, if you're going to claim to be an industry leader, you have the responsibility to lead.
You do.
And I think one of the things is also is opening the panel to let other voices speak. And that's for myself has been sort of hard because although I've raised my hand a few times to volunteer in certain stuff, I will get disregarded for whatever reasons, but it's kind of hard when people are just like, we would really love to have, more women and women of color, and I'm picked over the same person that keeps speaking again and again and again and again. And I keep thinking to myself, well, that person doesn't represent me at all. Like, this is another voice. And opening the panel to other voices, if that person is willing to speak about their sort of point of view, that way you could get other sort of touches of point of view, which is difficult to say because it's hard to raise your hand and say, hey, this is my point of view, which is scary because people do have the possibility of attacking, especially in the gaming community, which is so small and everybody seems to know everybody else, and they don't really get the idea of learning possibilities. So this is a moment to learn about mistakes. This is a moment to think about what you've done wrong and correct it. They immediately go on the attack, which can be fearsome for a lot of people, especially if you're new, because you're going to think to yourself, I'm not going to participate if I'm going to immediately be attacked, which crosses the whole thing of being a female in the industry and being a person of color in the industry and not feeling like you belong, or being very weary about even showing your stuff because bam, here are 50 emails or comments saying that you're a horrible person, and thus making us flee and never returning to the internet ever again.
I think another thing. Okay.
Oh, just, talking about measurable impact is being so important. The normality of it, the visual impact is something that I will be honest, I have poo-pooed in previous discussions, especially about, women being viewed in various, situations, and the, inevitable bikini chainmail issue. I didn't think of it that as being the impact because I'm not a visual learner. I'm more of an audio learner. So, but I think that's just it. Where's the voices? When I see panels on G Plus from gamers, where are the women? Where are the alternatives?
Yeah, and then we get stuck in the other panels, which is another discussion entirely. Like, many people who are viewing this, please don't add me to another panel ever. It's so tiring. Sometimes we don't want to talk about our race. Sometimes we want to talk about games. But it's a note. It's like, it's also, I think it also expresses the fact that we are more than just our gender. We are more than what the culture we represent or the race that we represent or the ethnicity, but it's hard because that means we have to be the representation of just that. Like, there's so few of us that's just like token woman, token Latina, token black person, and you're like, they have different emotions.
Can I turn that around, though? Because,
yeah.
when we're talking about, playing as other, is that one of the obstacles that people have when deciding that I don't just want to be a white guy in this game, I want to be something else? They don't want to have to be the token, and they don't want to have to represent that as strongly. That's a lot of extra work.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in games I will play someone that's either of my race or similar race, and there has been times that GMs have thought to themselves, oh, you're going to play a Latina, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm playing an African American, or oh, I'm playing a white person. And they are generally shocked at times, like, that you're not playing that, like, yourself. And that's it can be frustrating, especially if you happen to be a person that's very vocal about the fact that you're a minority in games. Which I thought it was amusing when it happened to me. Of course, I didn't go into like yelling at the GM. It was more like, no, like
See,
I'm not
I've
gonna.
always had the opposite experience, where especially when I was younger, I taken a hiatus from gaming. I'm just coming back to it in the last couple of years. But so when I was younger, a lot of it was expected that I was going to be playing a white guy. It was expected I was going to be fitting in to the rest of the group because everybody else was playing a white guy. And so if I played something outside of that, it was either horribly misogynistic or horribly racist towards the character, and I didn't want to deal with that. And so yeah, I just played along, and I'm not going to play anything different. I'm not going to play outside of those little boxes that were being drawn about this is what a character is in this world. As I'm older and more comfortable in my skin, I'm more likely to play either a black woman or some kind of woman of color in my games. Exception being like Sagas of the Icelanders, where everybody's Icelandic, and I'm pretty sure that, I might have played them more. I don't know. I haven't decided. But with certain exceptions, I am more likely to play someone of my skin tone or of a background somewhat similar to mine. So maybe not necessarily black, but at least a minority. And I'm 90. I'd say about 50%, 60% of the time I play a woman. Just because as I'm older and more comfortable in my skin, I do want to see myself represented at the table. I do
Yeah.
want somebody like me represented at the table and in the world. So from that perspective, yeah, it is kind of important to still. It might not be, it's probably not going to be strict, me, because I'm a database analyst by day. It's the most boring job in the world sometimes. I mean, yeah, it's problem solving and fun, but yeah, it's not nearly as cool as running around and shooting people and being a werewolf. Let's be honest. So there's always some piece of me, and as I said, as I'm more comfortable in myself, I want to see that represented more, and so I am more likely to play that.
So you don't fear making other people uncomfortable with that?
No. Part of it
Because
is.
that's you.
Yeah, part of it is if I am, let's say I'm going to play I played an Afro-Latina in another game, and I'm not Latina. I don't have that background. I do have a lot of friends who are. I do, I worked in restaurants and kitchens and stuff for forever, and so I had tons of friends who were Latino. We worked on it, and we worked and we talked about it, and so I think I have some perspective there. And I wanted to bring that to the table, and so yeah, we were playing. She was a cop. She was, so it's like, okay, well, what tropes would there have been? All right, let's flip this. No, she's not a criminal. She's a cop. No, she's not a son. She's a, let's just flip this around. And so sometimes, yeah, I am pushing people's buttons by playing myself. I am pushing people's buttons by playing somebody with my background, and I'm okay with that now. Whereas before, I might not have been.
As the same that you can push people's buttons by playing the white male, but doing it in a perspective that's completely different, because everybody's idea of what that character is supposed to be changes because you're putting it in a point of view from maybe bad experiences that you've had or just stuff that you see that they repeat on again and again. So going to the next question for everybody, why is role-playing important to you? Let's start with Meera.
You would have to separate role-playing from things like breathing and eating and shelter. One of the things I'll be talking about later today, I am a third-generation role player. My grandparents did it. My parents did it. I'm very surprised not to see them mentioned in some of these books on the history of gaming. And it may be because of the other perspective, too, other with a capital O. Separately from that, it is my downtime. It is the thing that brings me joy. It is the thing that challenges me. And it is the thing that I find the talents I have been gifted with and have developed in this world are best to approach. Whether those be talents of empathy or talents of understanding, other people, or getting into different viewpoints. I mean, those are important. Any kind of acting situations I've been in, all of those, apply.
And Liz.
Roleplay is important for me because I've always liked to make pretend and fantasy, and I think that roleplay is the other expression of that. And that goes into putting yourself in all different types of roles, and yeah, just being able to explore and have fun and do ridiculous things that your normal life isn't going to allow you to do. And that is just, I think, so important for all of us. And yeah, it's the best hobby. I really, really love roleplay.
Misha.
Yeah, and there's a certain aspect of wish fulfillment and being able to, no, in my normal life I'm not a werewolf, but hey, wouldn't it be cool if I was? And let's play and see what that looks like, or my character is, my in my everyday life I'm not a mom. I get to just drop everything and do what I want for fun. Not so much in real life. You can't. You got responsibilities. So some of it is wish fulfillment. Some of it is just being able to explore different parts of yourself and different parts of different aspects of things that like Monster Hearts was really instrumental for feeling out okay, well, what does sexuality, what does that mean to me? Is that other things or other games, what does it mean to be, so and so? What does it mean? So some of it is working. It's kind of like therapy. You're kind of working out some of your issues. But it's sort of like it's part wish fulfillment, where it's like, okay, if I could do anything I want, what would I do? Part of it is like, what would happen if I just straight up stab this guy? It's sometimes yeah, just you're having a bad day, that guy's been annoying. What would happen if I just killed him? Just to see. So, yeah. And it's in a safe way, and everybody gets to walk away after you're done killing each other.
Yeah, I think the safe thing is part of the big aspect of it, is making sure that you are, of course, safe when you're playing and that you feel comfortable. And it's great to actually participate in something that, despite the fact that people don't view it, it is a social thing. But the good thing is you're not sitting down and talking about your day or all your responsibilities. You get a little bit of an escape, and you get to create a bigger story with everyone else. There are sets and limits of what you can do, but it's brought up in the game, and the GM sort of guides you through it. But it's a lot of joy, and it's fun, especially to watch other people grow as they role play. Beth, when she started role playing, I remember this was very reserved, very quiet. And then one day we played Lady Blackbird, and she realized she could beat other people up during the game. And that's when a light tinged in the back of her head, and I saw her sort of like kill everybody in the room. And we're talking, this is the sweetest, most quietest person I've ever met. Suddenly go like, I can kick their ass? She's like, yeah, you can roll that. Let's see if you're successful. And she did. And seeing people develop their improv skills, seeing people get excited for a game or sort of like plan a character's background is sort of amazing to do that, because you get to see another side of them that maybe they don't show to anybody else. And you do develop these bonds with these people, because not only are you cheering on their characters, you're cheering them on and hoping that when they're in the game, they're having fun. And knowing that if you're having a bad day, you can just go in and play a game and not have to worry about it. And you're not doing it by yourself, you're doing it in group, which is amazing. Like, I work in an administrative thing, and they're always like, what should we do for team day? And I always want to be like, can you just let me play a game with you guys? And I know very well I couldn't, because it'd be like, no, guys.
You might be able to get them to play like Fiasco or something. Something
I know.
something,
Just make anyone cry.
I recently actually found out that a group of guys at my work gets together like once or twice a month after hours and plays at work. I'm like, why did anybody ever fight me?
You're like, dudes, I know chasing Morningstar, and he's like Google friend, Google Plus friends with me. You can't play without me anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, you get to play with people that you hopefully you like, that you feel safe around, that you're comfortable with. You get to explore different sides of yourselves. I mean, how could that be a bad thing?
All right, and the last question, since the question that goes before that, we sort of explored that. What recommendations do you have for people who get offended about topics during games? Dun, dun, dun.
I like. Well, okay, so for convention play and when I'm not playing with people I know, I like the X cards being on the table. There are very few times I will play with it off the table at a con. Like, I have to basically know everybody at the table before I will even consider that, because it's an easy mechanic. It works beautifully as far as, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about. I might not necessarily want to talk about why, but within my home groups, just say something. Hey, could you turn that down? Or hey, that's not working for me. Can we try this instead? And it's helpful to have a suggestion of maybe what they might want to try instead. But if you're not comfortable enough with your normal group to just say something, I think either you need to find a different group or you need to do a different game with them, maybe.
Yes.
So.
Liz, who likes very controversial games.
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think what Misha said was very good. And I also think just for people who are in the group as well, I find it so important. I always really like it. I GM a lot. I've become the token GM because I volunteered once 6 years ago, and then ever since then it's stuck with me. Um, but I always like it when players stick up for each other. So if you see someone who's uncomfortable and you see them being uncomfortable and it doesn't really look like they can say something, for you to be like, hey, that's a bit weird. You know what I mean? Because then it gives a person confidence to say something for themselves. And I think that's so important just in any game that you play, that you support each other. And if you see this happening, just to give someone a voice who may not have a voice themselves is just great.
Meera. She laughs evilly to the mic.
I would say simply, don't let fear demand your soul. And I know that sounds like I said that simply. There's a lot to that, though. It's all of the things that you would do in any kind of situation where there's somebody with a relationship you value. Listen to them. Even if it's somebody who's just come into a convention game and you think that they're disposable in some fashion, once you stop treating them like a human, they're not a human to you, and you're not going to have that kind of respect.
Yep. I think giving an overview of what subjects you might be touching during games or what the game is based off is very important. Some new players actually go in without reading anything. I'm a prime example of always doing that because I play a lot of story games, so it's like, I'm in! What's up? What do you need me to play? I haven't read a lick of anything, so I'll play whatever character has not been taken. That being said, it's perfectly fine to find games that you don't like, but if you're in a new group of people, it would be great if you actually read what the games are about, what subjects do you think might be touching, because as Monster Heart says, it's a lot of sex in the game, which I always warn people when they play with me will be touched a lot. That sounded way dirtier than it needed to sound. Touching.
People, you will be touched a lot in this game.
You will be touched a lot, people. And letting them know, also read the game and also feel out how it is within the group. Like Liz said, it's perfectly fine if you're a player to go in and stand up for that person. GMs in general aren't going to be that much of a, a jerk and tell you that they're not going to continue the game at most times. They're going to be gentle enough. If you still feel uncomfortable, maybe separate yourself from that group, find someone else that will obviously value your opinions and how you feel about certain things. But go in knowing that some games will poke at things that might be delicate to you. There are people that love the idea of Monster Hearts but hate the idea of sex, which is fine. But to me, it's sort of like when you're a teenager, you only have so many set of skills, and one of those skills is just being hormonal. I love Misha's face just shaking like,
I'm trying to think.
Weirdos not liking sex in Monster Hearts.
I understand. Like, I played with groups who were like completely no. We don't want to have any. We don't. Sex doesn't exist. Romance doesn't exist. You know that, and they completely brick that part away, and so. Like I've played in like werewolf camp, you know, and so I can kind of see, you know, from White Wolf campaigns where, yes, we are going to play the monster half. We're not going to, and so I can see but why would you play Monster Hearts then if you don't want to talk about the sex? That's what that phase was.
Or picking a skin that might not be beneficial of them having sex would be smart.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are so many games out to choose there, either OSR games, either indie games. There is something there for you out there. And there's going to be subjects that you may not want to touch. For example, I won't play any games about the Holocaust just because I worked with Holocaust survivors, and that's my personal preference. There are some designers that have played games that are supposed to sort of teach you how it was to be a survivor, and there are some designers that touch the subject in a way that I would rather not ever be touched again in that aspect. But I have had discussions, for example, with Jason Morningstar, that he brought wonderful games up saying that, hey, it was supposed to show a perspective completely different of showing that the survivors had to go through all this, which is understandable, and I respected the fact that he brought those games forward to me in a gentleman fashion, as he always is in interactions that I've seen him in. I swear to gosh, I'm not trying to get any free games. But he was really great on letting me know, like, there are good aspects out there of this game, just in case if you're ever interested. You can read the games, you don't have to play them. And I thanked him for that because it made me see that not everyone's going to touch a subject and make it something that you're completely repulsed by. It doesn't mean you have to play that game. Okay. It just means there are designers that are very thoughtful about what they're doing, either if they're playing about certain aspects. But yeah, that's basically discussion. Does anybody want to add to it before we end up hanging up on everyone who's watching us, our 6 viewers, apparently?
Hi, guys!
Well, I wanted to thank you for inviting me to this. I think that I've actually gotten a lot of really good perspective on this that I did not have before. I was going to say one of the things that I do to get into the mindset of a character of a different, you know, is just different from me, especially when I'm looking at culture that I didn't see, you know, addressed. I like looking at their cooking materials. I like looking at their idioms. And I like to look at blogs from people, you know, writing from that position. And those are my 3 top. I was just thinking I wanted to add that in there somewhere. My 3 top ways to start looking at that difference.
Yeah, and my characters, most of the time, I leave them like bisexual, even though like I don't openly say it in the game, just because if romance happens, but most of the time, friendships are more stronger in my character, like friendship relationships and friendship romances, which some people wouldn't get, but I feel that are super important in games. During a Dungeon World game, I had my character just totally crying over the loss of her so-called bodyguard, and it was like she said out loud, he was supposed to stay with me. And it was not this, oh, I lost my lover, it's, oh, I lost my best friend, which I think those relationships are important. But in continuing with sexuality, it's almost like anyone who goes for it might be able to get it if, that sounds so horrible, you might be able to get it, if it makes sense and if it's beneficial to the story.
I have been surprised so many times about my character's sexuality because I go in thinking pretty much the same thing, and then all of a sudden I'm hit like, oh my goodness, this character is in love with this woman, and she doesn't know how to handle it, or no,
And
this character
sometimes
just
it's
doesn't
fun to
like girls.
play, though. Sometimes it's fun to play the awkward, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, So sometimes just, leave it open, see what happens.
Yeah. I was doing a slow burn romance to one of Beth's character in Monster of the Week, and it was so subtle that she only realized until last minute. Like, my character just wanted to be besides her all the time, and so she's like, what's going on here? It's like, she's in love with you. She just doesn't know how to tell you. Liz, any last moments to discuss?
No, I just remember our conversation at the start of this. Like, for people who have tuned in, like, don't be daunted now by playing someone who is not exactly like you. Just remember to ask questions, remember to play a person and not a caricature, and remember to accept feedback if people have to say it. And that's it. And play whatever you like and try to experience it because it's awesome.
Yep. Basically, have fun with it and don't be
Yeah.
rude.
Yeah, exactly. Ari, why did you have this panel?
We just sum up the panel in 5 minutes. Like, don't be rude, guys.
It's like, have fun and don't be rude. Really?
The viewers are like, that's what I tuned in for? Alright. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all my panelists for participating. I'm going to stop the recording so we can all relax and start cursing as the way we want to. So bye, everybody!